Hey nerdy knitters, in this video we're looking at the half fisherman's rib or mock fisherman's rib pattern. We'll look at the pattern, the chart, and the written instructions. We'll work a row or two, and we'll also at the end compare it to full fisherman's rib. If you want to jump to any point in the video, use the timestamp links in the video description box down below. Let's take a look at half fisherman's rib. It's also referred to as mock fisherman's rib. Has a nice texture. You can see it has a little bit of a thickness there. Nice bit of stretch. It looks very similar to a knit one purl one rib, and it basically is, but instead of knitting and purling everything, we're adding some knit one belows in there, and that gives us that extra little bit of texture that it has. It's an even number of stitches, and it's a 2-row repeat, but in this chart I've added another stitch along the edge because I don't like to work knit one belows right along the edge because it creates a big floppy stitch. As you can see, it's only 3 stitches. It's just a combination of knits and purls and this extra stitch, this knit one below. If you need to know how to work a knit one below, just click the link up in the top corner. And here are the written instructions. Our first row, we simply knit, and then we turn our work, and on the wrong side row, we're purling and knit one below, purl, knit one below across the work to the final stitch, and then we purl one to give us the same edge along each edge. So we could use that for a scarf or something. Both edges are the same. And then you repeat those 2 rows for the pattern. You knit a row, and then the next row you purl and knit one below, purl, knit one below. And that's all there is to it. Since it's reversible, you might forget which side is the right side and which is the wrong side. After knitting a row, when I turn my work, I can see I've got all of the heads of the stitches right there. So I'm on a wrong side row because the purl bumps are all right there. I know I just knit this row. So when I turn and I see those purl bumps, I know it's time to work a wrong side row, which means I purl the first stitch and then I knit one below. And to knit one below, there's the stitch on my needle, and here's the stitch just below. You can see the head of the stitch there, the 2 legs right here. I'm going to insert right between those 2 legs into that hole, wrap my yarn, pull it through, and drop that stitch off the needle. And that's a knit one below. Purl, knit one below, purl, knit one below. I'll show you again. There's the stitch on the needle. Here's the stitch below it. There's the head right there. We can see a leg on either side. I'm going to insert right in the middle of that stitch. Wrap my yarn, pull it through, and pull that stitch off the needle. This movement is what gives it that extra texture that you don't find in a regular knit one purl one rib. It's very similar to a brioche style. In brioche, you would wrap the yarn, slip that stitch, and then on the next row, work those 2 together. Instead of doing that, when you knit one below, you're extending that stitch like it's been slipped, and this stitch above acts like that yarn over because we're not actually working it, we're just dropping it off, and it gives that extra little bit of fabric in there. But unlike regular fisherman's rib, we only work these knit one belows every other row. When I finish this row, I'll pull out that chart and we can compare the 2. And that's why this one is referred to as mock or half fisherman's rib, because we're only working those knit one belows every other row. So I finished that row. And again, if I were confused about what I had just done, I would look and I would see, okay, I've got purl bumps every other row, so I must have done my wrong side row. And this side, I just knit across those stitches. Okay, so let's compare that to fisherman's rib. This is a sample of fisherman's rib. It's in a bulkier yarn, so it is bigger. But even with that, you can see how much more texture it has compared to this one. And that's because we're working those knit one belows on every single row. So it has that extra texture to it because every single stitch is getting that knit one below treatment, where when you knit below, that stitch on the top just gets dropped off, but that it adds that extra texture in there. So you can see the difference between the 2. This one is much more plush and thick. because we're only working those knit one belows on every other row, hence the term half fisherman's rib. And there we have it. There's half fisherman's rib. If you'd like to get a copy of this page, you can head to tanyaknits.com/library and follow the instructions to get the download. And be sure to click the subscribe button down below if you like to get nerdy with your knitting.